I'm Tamika Caston-Miller, and this is Think, Flow, Grow Live. And I'm super excited today to be having this conversation with my good friend Natalie, who is she is actually has been doing a lot of work around discourse on race for many years. Natalie is also known as the Civil Right, and in Always Natalie. Natalie is has been doing a lot of work in terms of coaching, not just entrepreneurial coaching, but also personal coaching, life coaching, and so she's just she has been doing a lot of this work for a long time. So it's very awesome. I'm going to tell more about her just shortly. I do want to give just a little bit of background on myself and then where Natalie and I come together. So if you don't know about me, again, I'm Tamika Caston-Miller. I'm the mind behind Ashe Yoga. Ashe Yoga and Wellness is a part of the Ranch Houston, which is a space in Houston, an intentional space in Houston that's dedicated to healing and sustainable living. It's about connecting to your nature, or connecting to nature to cultivate your nature. And the Ranch Houston is dedicated to providing workshops and opportunities to connect with other people, foster relationship, community, get your hands into soil, build in our garden, eat natural food, and learn about sustainability, not only of our world, but also of our minds, bodies, and spirit. Natalie and I met through yoga, and she's one of my yoga students. And I usually say to my students that we're all students and teachers. And she certainly has helped to teach me things as well, because she also actually sits on the other side of many political things. I'm a progressive. Natalie is conservative, and we're both African American women who are creating change in the world. We just sometimes are doing that in different ways, but always through discourse. And so actually she and I started what is called Conversations, Coffee, and Queening, which is a TV show that is all about talking about hard topics with people who don't think and do everything the same, but people kind of assume that we do because we're both Black women. So we are dedicated to creating this discourse in the world, and that, I think, is a proper introduction for you, Natalie. Am I good on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think people get the gist of it.
There's so much more. There's so much more.
If they have questions, they can always Google and find out all that they need to find out.
Yes. So I wanted to talk today. Of course, we are in a really difficult week as the Black community is having a difficult week. 2020 can't stop, won't stop. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
But the crazy thing is that this hasn't just been something that I wish it was only relegated to 2020. You know what I'm saying? But it's not.
Yeah. No, it's been a very long history, long sustained history.
Mm-hmm. I think. So, yeah.
Today nothing new.
Yeah. Unfortunately. And I think it's going to be important today to kind of direct our conversation in a few ways. And one, we're just going to have a conversation about how we're feeling about things in general. I want to talk about the long-term effects and short-term effects of this. Also want to give a historical perspective, per usual. And then also temper all of this within yogic philosophy, because I'm not a Freudian scholar, but I am a yogic philosopher, and so I like to, and historian, so I'll bring that into that. And then we'll also talk about things that we need for people to stop doing and things that we need for people to start doing. So that's how we will frame the conversation. So Natalie is literally just on the hills from like doing her work. Well, meanwhile, I've been like simmering on this topic all day long. So, so Natalie, can you just tell me, like, when you heard about George Floyd. First of all, did you watch the video? And what were your thoughts? Your first thoughts?
So I didn't watch the video. I saw kind of just the pictures, right? The images that kind of emerged. And the reason why I didn't watch the video is because it was very reminiscent to me emotionally. If anybody has seen the documentary Fruitvale Station, if they haven't, they should.
Yes.
But it's very reminiscent to the situation that went down in California there. And very rarely, like, there's only been a few, I guess, episodes in my lifetime where you actually got to see somebody die, like not after the death and the body's covered or at the funeral or in the hospital, but like to actually see another human being take another human being's life and watch the life leave them. Mm-hmm. And that for me is a very difficult thing to process. Like my headspace has been like, I'm getting emotional right there. My headspace is like just not solid around that. And so I did not watch the video because I've been crying enough. And I would have lost it if I watched like during the documentary. And my husband knows I'm not like a super, it's probably the wrong words, but I'm not a super emotional human being. I mean, I feel them, they're there, and then I kind of go to the logic side of things. Mm-hmm. And in Fruitvale Station at the end, when the cops shot him, and similarly, they just kind of stood around like, who cares? He's gasping for breath we could call 911, but we're not going to. I lost it in the movie theater, in a fully packed movie theater. I sounded like a beached whale. I mean, like it was the most horrible, ugly sounds I was making. And I could not calm down from that for about 30 minutes after the movie. So much so that when I first started hollering in the theater, my husband was like, "Babe, are you for real?" Because he thought I was joking. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I did not want to relive that for this. So I didn't watch it, but I'm equally as disturbed currently and just looking at the images of it.
Yeah, I also didn't watch it because first of all, I believe that we don't have to continue traumatizing ourselves by watching public lynchings. I think we have a choice on that. And I think that we've evolved as the human race when public lynching stopped being a thing that people would all come out to watch. And also, much like the Zapruder tape, I don't need that. I don't need a Zapruder tape to give me visible proof of a man being killed because he was black. And the mayor of Minneapolis has come out and said that if he was white, he would be alive right now. Which is saying a lot, considering that the mayor is the head of the essentially of the force. I much like Fruitvale. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Fruitvale Station, and you guys can talk about it in the comments, but essentially, there was a man who was shot by the police and like no one rendered aid. He could have survived. I mean, he could have survived. We can always argue about, and we will not, like whether or not someone deserves to get shot or whatever.
Right.
We're not going to have that argument because that's no. But but what we definitely know is that any human in any capacity that has the opportunity to help usually has some sort of human compunction to do so. And so to sit there and see the humanity of a person, like a person's own nature being so absconded by rage or obscured rather by rage and obscured by hatred or obscured by stress or whatever the argument's going to be for how they felt. and watch that humanity absolutely not exist in that person for a second while they take the life of another person, to me is absolutely something that is unconscionable. I can't even imagine not rendering aid, even if I were the person who fired the shot.
Right.
So, like, I wonder, and I don't carry an arm. Natalie is a card carrying arm carrier.
Arm
Uh,
bearer. Yes, I am.
and one of the, I mean, I'm definitely a pacifist. She's not.
I am not. For these very reasons, right? Ahmaud
Yes,
Marbury, if he had had a weapon on him that day when he was running,
maybe.
quite possibly he could be alive. He would also probably be facing life in prison, but he would be
Exactly.
alive, right?
Exactly. But like, I always wonder, like, if I did accidentally, let's say I accidentally shot someone, or let's say someone broke
Hmm.
into my house and I shot them. I'm not going to sit there and watch them bleed out on my floor. I would still
But
call 9.
Tamika, but that's because to James Baldwin's point, right? You're not a monster,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That I mean, like you are to his point, some 50 plus years ago, about how certain people see other people. Actually, they don't even see them as people, right? So it's how certain individuals see other living creatures and are able to take their life without the blink of an eye or an afterthought about it. You are a moral monster at that point. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not even like you're a human being. You're just a walking monster that's breathing oxygen among us.
Yeah. And I think that there are those people, and we know that they are
Mm-hmm.
because one took someone out this week and 3 others stood by and watched.
Mm-hmm.
And we could also argue who's the worst person in that scenario. You know what I mean?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I again, I don't think I know anybody, and I know a lot of people. I don't think I know
Mm-hmm.
anybody who would watch someone's life be taken from them. So I just wonder what also is the echo chamber that person is living in that gives them the ability to sit there and watch that happen and for nothing to be done about it.
So I don't know that to be true necessarily, right? I don't know that I don't know anybody who could sit and watch somebody life slip away. And I say that because I guarantee you that as this whole shenanigans plays out, there will be plenty of people who say, Officer so and so, he was such a nice person. He
Mhm.
always came to the ice cream shop and he bought the kids ice cream. Right? There's going to be people out there who say that, right?
Mhm.
So the problem with the monster is, right? So the Jeffrey Dahmers and the Ted, the strangler dude in California or whatever, who was practically a congressman, like
Mhm.
they seem okay, right? They
Yeah.
they do just the right amount to seem okay, but then when given the opportunity, right, their most deranged fantasies play out. So
Yeah.
I don't know that to be true. I would like to believe that, right?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
fact that there has been so little, I don't even need outrage, right? Like I don't need you to necessarily carry outrage. I'm not going to dictate what your emotions should
Mhm.
be, but I will dictate what your judgment should be on the situation, right? So there's been so little judgment on this police officer's behavior in my feed, and I know a lot of people, like 7, 8, 10, 12,000 people, right? So there's been so little, if any, judgment carried out against this police officer's behavior. I don't know, which is why I did the whole post about having allies, because there are people who I thought were my ally, and their silence is deafening right now.
Yeah. I think that people failed to realize that non-action is action, um,
Yep.
and non-speaking is speaking. And I think that people fail to realize as well that their friends who are hurting are watching. So today in my world, a girl that I know from high school created a post showing the looting in Minneapolis, and I immediately was like felt some sort of way about it. And so before I did anything, I went to her page to see if she'd also posted on, on this murder. And she said nothing before then. There was nothing about any of that. So her only post about
Yeah.
the murder of this man was about Minneapolis looters, and who, of course, all were like Black and brown people who were angry. And
Right.
so for me, I realized that this is a pattern that happens. This is a pattern where, there's something that happens that is horrible. The whole communities of color experience a trauma together. Then the community that it actually affects experiences another trauma. So there's like layers to this, right?
Right.
And then there's, all of the outrage that happens. There's the sadness that happens, of course, but there's the deafening silence, as you mentioned, that happens. And then, like the next day or 2 days later, then they post about people being pissed off about it, like they're the problem. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, you said nothing before on this. And now your whole commentary is about people's reactions to someone
Right.
getting publicly lynched, and
Right.
then trying to get people to explain why people react in this way. How about
Right.
trying to get people to explain why police officers feel that they can just take people's lives without any accountability? And I'm sorry, but like being fired isn't accountability. Being put
No.
in prison is accountability, and being held up to the same standard. To if George Floyd were the person pulling a gun on someone else and taking someone else's life, 5 minutes wouldn't have passed before he would have been
Right.
arrested and all of those things. So I just, I see all of this, all of these reactions that happen. And I think that people don't realize, if you have a non-reaction to the violence, and then you have a reaction to the response to the violence, then you look like an asshole.
Right.
Like you,
Right.
and you probably are. So, like, I'm gonna, call you on it, and then you're going, and hopefully we have a conversation around it. Like today, it didn't go well, but I'm sorry, not sorry. Like your focus is on the wrong thing. Your focus is on a reaction to anger. Like people act angrily in lots of different ways. And
let's be clear, people. This whole thing with the looting, and I'm by no means condoning the fact that you go and loot
nobody
things.
is
That's not what I'm
condoning
condoning,
looting.
right? I just want to put, because there's going to be somebody out there who's like, so yeah, okay, so no, I'm not condoning you loot. But let's be clear. This is a group of people, a community that set out to protest an action that took a member of their community, and they feel like they have no power, no voice, and they aren't being seen. So what do people do when they feel like they have no power, no voice, and they aren't being seen? They're going to do something to get your attention.
They break
right.
shit.
They're gonna break stuff. It's like a 3-year-old, right? Like if mommy's not paying attention to me, I'm gonna go over here and color on the wall. I bet you recognize me now, right? Yep. So there's that. And on top of that, the United States is not this is not a novel idea of looting. We loot after college teams lose games. So far less important things.
And after
people are in the streets,
win games, and after
correct.
NFL teams win games, like it doesn't have to even be a loss.
That's correct. So, and no one is posting stories about, oh my God, these animals are in the streets because the Patriots lost. Like no one is saying that.
Or because the Red Sox won.
Correct.
So because Philly won.
Right. Right.
And they burn stuff when Philly
They burn stuff.
We're gonna burn
stuff.
Oh yeah. Like turn over police cars.
Yep. And so I mean,
FYI, nobody got killed in that. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like the fact that this is a thing. And then the other thing that really bothers me, because I've just decided to start posting with either no commentary or very little commentary around, just because I want Facebook to keep it in my memories. And so when I posted this story, it was, there's always the folks, at least the folks I know, who get on the thread and, are like, yeah, this is really bad. But remember, Black people kill more Black people. And I'm like, like, if
Literally,
one more person, if
when
one
I
more
hear
person.
that, I actually have to take a very deep breath. I
I
have to
do.
take a breath
I
so
do.
deep that my neighbors feel that vacuum created with that deep breath. Because my thing is
I
this:
do.
I first of all, I'm sorry, but should never be in the same sentence. Period.
Should not ever in all of life.
Like just in general, and I just think the insensitivity is crazy. So
Yeah.
I know that. So I was talking earlier with a friend, and I was talking about like why is this so, like for me this death seems harder than ones before, and
Mm-hmm.
I think what it is for me is because I realize that like we're all in this pause, but the pause doesn't pause racism. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
Um,
No.
so it's like all of these things are happening around us, where like hopefully we're becoming more of a community, hopefully we're helping one another, hopefully we are providing community where we can, enlightenment where we can. And so I was telling her earlier that what this reminds me, or what this says to me, is that the feeling of the pause, I think for me was what felt nice, but I also think it was a little uncomfortable because like this communal experience felt so different. Like it didn't feel like anything that I had felt before, being in true community with people around the world, like true trauma with people around the world, because usually that trauma is something that's specific to a particular community.
Right.
And so like for me, the peace that I was hearing or experiencing was abnormal. And so like the calm or whatever was abnormal. It was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so what Lenny, my wife, said, as you know, she said, oh, this is how PTSD is seated. And you don't trust the peace anymore. Like you don't trust that peace is true peace. You begin to like, or else I won't say you, I um didn't feel that peace was something that was going to last, or that I could count on. And so it felt really awkward, but I didn't realize why it felt awkward until this happened. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Like all the anger, all the outrage, all the ire, all the craziness, all the people doing what they do, being political, being hateful, violent. That's what this country does. And that feels normal for me. And I was like, damn, like as a Black woman in America, violence feels normal and peacetime doesn't.
Right.
And
That's kind of where we are right now. It's
it
where we've
is.
been. It's where
It
we've
is.
been.
It is. Irene just mentioned, 1992, the same thing happened with Rodney King. And yeah, Rodney King, was killed by officers. If people don't remember, he was
No,
alive at that
he
time.
wasn't killed.
Oh,
He
that's
just
right.
got the snot beat out of him.
That's right. He got the crap beat out of him. That's right.
Yep.
That is right, because he only just recently died, right? Like a year or so ago. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he got the tar beat out of him by these four white
Yep.
cops, and it was on video,
Yep.
and all the cops were acquitted. And so
It's I think
burned
it's
down homes.
yeah, basically that's pretty much what happened. But I think it's I think it's a crisis of consciousness
Yeah.
that we have, right? I think part of the problem, and don't get me wrong, I get it. I get the other side of the argument, right? Because it would be the equivalent of somebody telling me that Jesus killed people wrongfully, right? I'd be like, no, he didn't. It's impossible. He's Jesus. He don't do that, right? So if you're
Are
Jesus,
cops Jesus in this metaphor?
yes, it is to a lot of people, right? So it's the same reason
Wow.
why there was such vitriol around Kaepernick kneeling for,
Hmm.
with the flag and the national anthem and all this stuff, right? And there are a lot of people out there who have elevated this country and all of the symbolism of the country. So that's the law enforcement aspect, the flag aspect, the songs that go along with it, to their God status, right?
Yeah.
So and they will say no that they haven't, but the fact that they believe they are infallible in their actions, the
Yeah.
only infallible being I know is my creator.
Yeah.
Everything else uh, has a fault. So to try to reconcile that when that is your entire belief system, and without that belief system, you would not know what to do with yourself if you did not have that belief system, is a difficult thing for, because again, that is, that would be like telling me that it's something horrible about my creator, right? I'm gonna be like, no.
You're
And
right.
I can't even
Yeah.
mentally process it. So a lot of these folks are in that position. How we break that, I don't know, because again, you're talking about a religion now.
It is a religion, and it's a cult. It's a
Yes.
personality, and it's a cult of nationalism, and
Mm-hmm.
and that cult has its leader, and
Mm-hmm.
and that cult is super strong. And last week or not last week, the last episode we talked about cults, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the attributes and characteristics of a cult are definitely indicative of what we're seeing with the cult of racists in the United States and racism in America, and specifically people who are Trump supporters. And I think that, of course, and I think that what's going to end up happening is there'll be people who are like, well, this is because of Trump and blah 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 blah. And I think that at this point, we need to start putting the onus back on every single person who is posting fuckery essentially about the situation, because in a way, I think we've actually started to scapegoat Trump for other people's bad behaviors. Yes.
Yeah.
Is he a POS? Absolutely. Is he someone who I can't wait to go away? Absolutely. And all of those things. But at the same time, he did not invent
No.
racism in America.
No.
He did not make your uncle or your neighbor or your father or your brother a racist. He simply planted some soil. Actually, he didn't even plant the damn
I don't even
soil.
think he planted soil. I don't
He
think
didn't
he
plant
did
the soil.
anything.
He just
Yeah, I don't.
mulched. He
Yeah,
just
I don't.
mulched on top of that
Yeah,
shit.
I'm like,
The soil
I
was
don't think.
there. The seeds
Yeah,
were there. The water, the irrigation system was there. It just needed a
the
little
trees,
mulch.
all the vegetation was there.
All the vegetation was
People have
there.
been harvesting from the racism field for a very long time, right?
And
Which
and
farmer happens
yes,
to own the field is irrelevant, right? People
yes.
have
And
been harvesting
Irene,
from that field for a very long time.
yes, Irene just put in our live community. Racism has always been here, but Trump enlightened the torch. And Irene, also feel free to hit that call button if you want to call in. But yeah, I mean, for sure, there have been people who have been lighting the torch in significant and insignificant ways, in overt and non-overt ways. But for me, like, I think the thing that really irks me is the common person, like the everyday person who's just like chilling in their house, posting bullshit, and spreading it, and then and creating more segregation of thought and enforcing a racist narrative through a simple post or a simple forward or a simple this, that, or the other, and then have the nerve to not actually listen when a person of color says, hey, that shit was racist, or that was not acceptable, or I don't condone, you know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
It's very, very much this cult of personality in Trump that I think people really want to scapegoat. But the truth is that what is going on, it's like any other cult. You cannot convince me to go call Jim Jones Jesus.
No.
Like
Correct.
you still have to have somebody who's willing to buy what you're selling. And
Right.
so I think at some point we need to also just like take accountability for the things that we're selling and at any given time. And so and this has to also deal with like how we heal. I think also it has a lot to do with how we speak to our own communities about these things. And so one thing that I was speaking about earlier was like, how do we speak truth to our own community? And then how do we speak truth to, like, as a person of color, how do I speak truth to the communities that are doing harm, right? And
Right.
so, like, for me, speaking truth to my community looks like unhelpful conversations or conversations that just simply blame Republicans or blame Trump or blame
White people or blame. Right.
or
Right.
blame colonization. Like, colonization, as a historian, it is extraordinarily important for me to speak to colonization, colonial hangover, and all of those things. And we're no longer in that. We're in the hangover from it. So we need to also be speaking about what we're doing right now that perpetuates this thought, that perpetuates these problems. That, because the truth is, to the Black community, the only folks holding us back right now is us in terms of actually like advancing certain things. When it comes to institutional racism, the way that we can change institutional racism is becoming a part of the institutions that have systemically been racist or historically been racist. So becoming judges, governors, senators, to get in from the inside and to change that, the heads of police forces, sheriffs, and crap like that, which is why people like Sheriff Acevedo, or not Sheriff, Police Chief Acevedo, is such here in Houston, Texas. I love that he always speaks truth to bullshit. He's like, that was some racist ass cops, and they killed that dude. And that's something that I would have never tolerated here in Houston, Texas. Now, whether or not he was just speaking for politics or not,
I was gonna say he tolerated a whole bunch of other shenanigans. So,
well, whatever the case may be, aside from this week, when he comes out and he denounces other police officers, those are his peers. And he's also a person of color speaking to his peers that are not people of color. And whether or not, like, behind the scenes, I really don't care what he does behind the scenes, because what the people of Minneapolis are hearing is a police chief of color denouncing other police. Now, what we experience here in Houston can be totally different. And as a person who's lived in some severely racist ass areas, I'll take Houston over most places any day in this country. We have another comment from Irene that is, isn't it ironic? 75 police officers is surrounding the man that killed George, but the man who would not take his knee off the neck of George to allow him to breathe, and he's not locked up. I am livid. I'm trying to do my deep breaths, but I am livid. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that people will like encircle this murderer under the auspices of supporting blue, regardless. That's. But if we were to change the narrative, though, if we were to say, okay, this is a priest, who abused the child, people were all up in arms when other priests surrounded a priest and said, well, we're going to protect him and we're going to move him because they themselves weren't Catholic, or maybe they themselves
Right.
were recovering. So they're like, nah, they're like, that's bullshit. This guy did absolutely the wrong thing. Like, he needs to be this, that, and the other. I don't care if he's a priest and blah, blah, blah. But that's because they weren't Catholic.
That's because they weren't Catholic. Correct.
So when you
Correct.
sit
But
there and it's like it's easy work to sit there and be able to say, this is wrong, when you don't have to do the hard work of saying, oh shit, I've supported that person.
well, and I also don't understand why people feel like they have to, because I think part of the problem is that if you're a white person, and for all the white people out there, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if you're a white person, what must be going through your head is that it's almost like what black people feel. Like if I say something, then that makes me a part of the group, right? Like I've had a ton of conversations with various white folks on subjects that are kind of auxiliary to this, and their thing is that, yeah, but I don't want to be blamed. So if I say something, then people are going to blame me and be like, white people, white people, white people, right? And so.
Yeah.
And that might be the case. I'm not saying that it won't be the case, but to be, there's a whole book out there about white fragility and all this, right? To bury the wrongness and the judgment of the behavior, because you're going to have to endure however many moments of discomfort, is very telling. And it also speaks to the resiliency of Black people. Like I've heard a lot of people say that the reason why I don't say anything is because I don't want to have to go through it, right? And be aligned. And you saw it a lot in the 60s when there were white people who decided to help with the civil rights movement, whether it was like the Freedom Riders or people helping people vote or whatever the case may be, right? They were recipients of just as much violence.
Totally.
And they had the Klan riding on them too, right? So most people don't want to go through that. But
when they don't have to, when they get a choice.
When they don't have to, right? Yeah. But then you want to sit in silence, and then you also want to tell me not to say anything about it, exactly. Because it makes you uncomfortable. Well, my whole life is uncomfortable. So now what we gonna do?
Exactly.
Exactly. You're talking about 5 minutes of discomfort to my lifetime of discomfort.
Thank you. Exactly. Like, welcome to what discomfort actually feels like. This is going to be hard to say because I have a feeling this person's going to listen to this podcast, but it needs to be said. So there was taking this to the COVID environment. There was a studio that opened, and when it after everything was allowed to be open, and the first day of opening that studio, someone called the marshal on that studio, which I think is kind of interesting anyway, like weird anyway, but someone called the marshal on that studio, and the marshal came in and checked out to make sure that the studio was doing what it was supposed to do, and then they left, and because the studio was. And so anyway, all people were super pissed off at the fact that the studio had a marshal called on it. And I was like, welcome to being Black.
Right.
Like, literally.
Right.
We can't barbecue. We can't run. We can't walk. We can't kneel. We can't sell cigarettes outside of a store. We can't do any of those things. No. Are you kidding me right now? You've had...
Right. And you lived, and you will call the police because you think someone is about to enter the apartment complex, or is in the wrong gym, or is sleeping on the couch in an Ivy League school that shouldn't be on the student couch of the Ivy League school. But you will not call the police when someone is actually... You will video record someone killing somebody else. Yeah. You won't call the police though. You'll stand by and you'll watch them put a knee on somebody's neck or chase somebody down with a shotgun or an officer point blank shooting somebody running away from them, you won't bother with any of that. But let somebody barbecue in the park. You are
I
all
think
on
that
it.
like we're just so off on like what gets to be accepted as rage building. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I just couldn't. I that for me, I was like, I'm not a good person to ally you right now because you are totally okay. You're okay. You're alive, and you literally spent one day, which is like every day for everyone else. Seriously, I think the only reason I won't say I think I know the only reason why I'm not pulled over more because and I have evidence because I used to get pulled over all the time for just being in a particular neighborhood. The only reason why I don't anymore is because I have DV plates. I have disabled veteran plates because my wife is a disabled veteran and also drives my car. Do
Right.
you know how different that I have been treated since I've had DV plates? I remember going to just a little bit of levity since we got a little heavy. I remember I was in freaking Kingwood, Texas, which is racist
God
as
help. I
fuck.
was gonna say, child, that North Houston child, that North Houston is on it with the hoods.
Man, like the Klan is strong.
The Klan
And
is strong. Like they march out there openly. They are happy to march,
I was
hooded
going
up and
to
everything.
my a hairdresser I used to see out there. I come off. I was late to the appointment. I was coming off of the highway at like 70 miles an hour. There was a speed trap when it went down to 35 miles an hour, and I got caught in it, right. And I just remember I remember going, oh shit, because I also didn't have any of my tags, like they were all expired. I don't think I had my insurance card with me or something. Like I don't remember, but there were like 4,000 things that were wrong that day, and I remember feeling super black when I got pulled over by the cops. Like I felt black. Okay, so the cop comes up. It's an old white man. I'm in Kingwood, Texas. The man is coming up. I got everything expired on my whole life, right? And I don't have all the things with me. And he's like, you know, you're going quite fast, ma'am. And I was like, I was late for an appointment, and I'm still late for it, and I know I was speeding. I did that, and so he was like, asked me for my license or whatever. He looks at my tags that are expired. He walks around my car, looks at my plates. He comes back. He didn't even run my license. And he came back and he was like, all right, well, you get to your appointment safely and slow down. I was like, in what America am I living? Because any other time, and I wasn't looking cute. It wasn't my breast that got me out of it. It was
Well,
Kingwood.
I'm gonna say this. So, in general, my experience with police officers has been great, right? Like, because I have a lead foot. My regular cruising speed is 80 on the freeway, so I get pulled over often, or often enough. My experience has I've usually not. I usually don't get a ticket. I admit to what I've done, whatever, and that does not discount what other people go through, because so
Yeah.
many people are like there's this guy on Facebook who recorded his little traffic stop, this black guy who recorded his little traffic stop. And he's like, look, see, if you're respectful, you make it home. And I'm like, that is by the grace of God you made it home.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who did exactly what they were supposed to do. Philando Castile was like, hey, look, I got a
Yes.
concealed carry license. My gun, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. If an officer stops you and you are a concealed carry handgun owner, you are supposed to let the officer know, I
Yeah.
have a weapon in my vehicle. It is secured in whatever place you have it secured in. I am a concealed carrier, and I just wanted to alert you to that, officer. How would you like me to proceed? Then the officer will
Yep.
give you instructions. Philando
Yep.
Castile, that didn't happen to. So just because you are gracious and obliging and all of this other stuff doesn't mean you get to still make it
Doesn't mean
home.
anything.
It doesn't
It
mean
doesn't mean
anything. It doesn't
it
mean
depends
anything.
on it depends on where on the hierarchy of presumed worth you sit. So like
Well,
if
and
you
it
are
depends on the officer, right? Because it depends on the officer, right? So yeah,
right,
plenty of
but,
racists
but
out
there's
there.
but there's
There's
also
also
there's also like a hierarchy of like, okay, well, like black man, potentially dangerous, could shoot me,
right,
and down here. And then there's like black woman who's a little bit higher than that. If she's really cute or fair, then she gets to be higher in that category. And then there's like Latinas are super high, and then there's like Asian men who are like the highest because they probably are running a corporation. And like so like there's like this hierarchy of like intelligence and their perceived threat or their perceived worth or value. And based on
there
that is how the world perceives them and subsequently how law enforcement treats them.
the world does have a hierarchy to it. That is very true. And my whole kind of point is that that like just because I don't go through it, because a lot of people
Exactly.
seem to think that if they didn't experience it, it couldn't have possibly happened.
Yeah.
But just
The,
because I
the
don't
whole
go
like
through
my
it,
black friends have never gone through that before thing is really annoying. I'm like, first of all, like you have one black friend. And secondly, your weed dealer is not your black friend, okay? Like, come on. Like, let's just cut the shit. Like
let's just be
that person
serious.
you work with is never going to tell you the truth about how they feel about you in this situation because they
Right,
work with you. And that's another thing. So I just want to get to some of the things that we need to stop doing. Can we
right,
can we stop making assumptions that just because we work together or possibly, peers on some level, that we are friends and we think the same way? Can
right,
we can we stop that? Can we just stop making assumptions that because you and I are both black women, or because this person and I are both people of color, or because we're both yoga teachers, that we all think the same way and we have all had the same experience? Can we just stop?
right,
Can we stop making
right.
that assumption?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
what stereotypes are built on.
Right. It's not helpful because
It's not
then you come
helpful.
into a point where you're like, I want to talk about my feelings on this. And you're like, wait, what? I thought we thought the same. And it's like, we have totally different life experiences. Like, I had a whole life
Right,
before I was a yoga teacher, or a whole life before we were friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to
right.
have different opinions on things. So I would like to ask for people to just stop making assumptions. Like, lead with the question. How are you feeling about this today? How do you feel about this situation? Before making an assumption about anything. And then
Yeah,
if you don't get the answer you are expecting, don't get pissed off about it. Like, if you are willing to ask a question, be willing to listen to an answer too.
right. Yeah.
So,
Well, I would like people to stop making comparisons, right?
mhm.
Like let every situation stand on its own. And it's not just like, like I got profiled in a store, I wrote about it, and people chimed in. They were either in disbelief and were like, "Are you sure that that's what they?" Yeah, I'm sure that they were refolding the Hermes scarf. That was like, yes, I'm certain of that.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and
mhm.
or I got the, well, I've gone into stores too, and I'm white, and they follow me around the store too. Well, great for you.
Yeah,
I'm telling about my story. This is what happened to me, and this is how it made me feel, right? And it happens all the time. Like people try to compare slavery with the Holocaust or with the
yeah.
Native American.
Comparative
I'm like,
comparative
the
oppression.
tragedies are the tragedies. Let them
Yeah,
stand on their own and be the tragedy. We don't need to try to one up a tragedy. Like,
yeah. Like, I think if you're doing like comparative oppression in order to elevate the world, in order to see similarities, and in order to make historical arguments and psychological arguments, then yeah, the whole comparative tragedy is going to be a thing. Like, the Black Lives Matter movement is, and of itself, it's a compilation of a bunch of tragedies that are super similar, and they all paint the picture of what life is like for Black people in America. And so, and that's a way to use comparative tragedy to
Right.
actually advance something. But being like, well, I understand how you feel because my grandma, used to have to walk to school, and because she couldn't catch the bus because she was Native American and we lived in Oklahoma. It's like, first of all, that's your grandmother's experience. You're trying to compare
Right.
my lived experience with
Right.
your experience via storytelling,
Right.
and not to say that your grandmother's experience isn't important. It's to say that each of us get to have our own experience, and you don't have to respond to mine with the story of someone else's. That's all. That's
Correct.
all. That's all we're
Exactly.
saying. So,
That's all.
so
That's it.
let's go with another stop. Stop asking Black people to speak for the whole Black community. That's not how we heal. Because
That is correct.
first of all, Black people and African American people and Africans and all Black people from the diaspora are not one monolithic community.
Correct. We're not
Black,
even the same people. Can we just be clear that we're
we
not
don't
even the
all speak
same
the same.
people?
We don't all speak the
Like,
same languages. We have
Africa has like a gajillion languages and a
over a
gajillion
thousand.
different cultures. And like, that is entirely different than, say, people of color in South America, the tribes. And like, I'm just like, come on, people. Like, we're not even the same people. We have, yes, the same complexion, maybe, but that ain't got nothing to do with us being the same people.
We have similar stories. And I feel, as a woman whose family is from Louisiana, I feel very, very close to the history of the people from Bahia, Brazil. I know that we have similar stories and similar backgrounds and similar religion that was, that history and all those things, and similar foods and all those things. And I know that we're connected. And we still have totally different histories. So we can't speak to the whole community as one monolith, as opposed to saying, look, we have a shared experience. I mean, if we look at like Cuba or the Caribbean, Louisiana folks, the people from Gullah Island, and in South Carolina, and we look at people from the Caribbean coast of Latin America, including Brazil, then yes, we have a shared history. We have shared food. We have shared religions that in North America were beat out of us, but in other areas they keep. We have those things, and those similarities are important to create diaspora power. You know what I mean? To like to be able
Cultural
to,
connection.
yes, those cultural connections and those that sense of community across borders is really important. But to sit there and just call Africans like Africans and not like West Africans or like Kenyans, and like there's a big damn difference between Moroccans and Zulu people of South Africa, or Black people from the South versus Black people from the Northeast. Like we all have different things going on, or Black Latinos who have a whole other set of complicated issues versus Black North Americans who are just still trying to deal with the effects of Jim Crow and all of that. Like they're trying to still, like Black Brazilians are still just trying to live in a post-colonial era, whereas like Black Americans are trying to live in a post-Jim Crow era. So it's like there are just different things. Like, let's just stop calling things by a monolithic term. It's really annoying, and I think that we don't get anywhere when we do that.
Right.
Do you have another that you'd like to ask people to stop or start?
I do, and this is for my people. So to my peeps, I'm going to ask you to stop being impatient with genuine white people who are trying to understand. Like, we cannot have it both ways. You cannot be like, I want an ally and I want someone who understands and I want somebody who can sympathize. And then when they ask you about your hair care routine, now white people don't touch my hair, but Really, nobody touched my hair unless your name is Roz and you are my stylist. Don't touch my hair.
I've literally
But
never touched your hair, and I see you a lot. So yeah.
I know, right? But you can't be mad at somebody for like I hear so many black people that I know say, and I don't even know why she was asking me about like she's asking or he's asking because he don't know. So
Yeah.
take the moment and give them your perspective and make sure you tell them this is my perspective.
Yes,
Right?
and
Because
don't
it's
try
a
to
it's a
swallow the
moment of
entire thing.
education.
Yes, and I have to then now speak to dear white people. Dear white people, please fucking listen.
Yes.
Like, if you ask a question, listen to the answer, which was the
Yeah.
problem for today. A very patient or somewhat patient Tamika turned into a very impatient Tamika very quickly because the person didn't listen. And the person decided to just go into fragility mode of, I don't understand and I need you to help me understand. And I don't understand and I feel bad about this and I need you to make me feel better. And I'm like, I don't need to make you feel better because George Floyd's death isn't about making you feel better. George Floyd's death is George Floyd's death. And,
Correct.
and Black people feel very traumatized right now. And Black people, I have no responsibility to you to make you feel better. I can tell you
Right.
my truth so that you can understand the Black community a lot more or a little bit more, at least from my perspective. And my perspective is framed from a woman who was
Hmm.
raised in Texas, who was reared in Louisiana, who has a master's degree and is a yoga teacher who left corporate America because corporate America was parasitic. So that's a lot of different lenses through, or a very specific lens rather, through which I'm looking that isn't going to be the same perspective as everyone else. And so someone else who is from uh, Alabama, who has always been lived in oppression, who doesn't have a similar education, who doesn't have a similar circumstance, who doesn't have a white freaking wife, who doesn't have like, who isn't bilingual, like all these other things who make
Right.
money might give you a different answer. So just listen to the one that I'm giving you and listen to others. Like mine isn't going to be the last answer.
Right.
Keep doing your work. Like, please, white people, do your work and
Do
asking
your work.
multiple people and doing research and teaching your kids better and also like telling them this is wrong and acknowledging when Black people call things racist because it probably is, and
Right.
maybe it's not. Maybe it's that person's like whatever, it's their whatever going on, but at least pause before you decide that it's not racist. I'm just
Well, and you can't, and unless you're the person in the situation, you can't say whether it is not or it is, right? Like that's for the individuals in the situation. I
yeah
can look at it and say, to me it looks like he was racist or she was racist, and you can look at it and say, to me it doesn't, right? And that's fine,
yeah
and then that's
yeah
kind of it, because
yeah
only the two people who are in it
yeah and
really know what the
it's just
heck is
about
going on.
listening. It's just about
Right.
listening. I mean, you've said
Right.
things to me that I don't agree with, and I haven't been like, well, screw you, I don't agree with you, so I'm not ever talking to you again. It's been like, I don't like what you just said, and I don't like you in the second, and I still like you, but I'm gonna need a minute to take a whole breath. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me take that breath for a second. Like, let's not dispose of the breath. But I think one thing that you're saying that I really appreciate is how people of color are complicit and in the problems in the world and in our country, and so we can't like not hold other people of color accountable for how
Accountable.
complicit in this, and we need to have those tough conversations like that one. This one, like I was saying a couple of weeks ago, or the last episode, the one social media account that blames everything on white people and colonialism. I'm like, okay, as a historian, I can absolutely say that we are definitely having a lot of problems because of colonialism. And I can
Right.
also say that if you only relegate our problems to colonialism, we're never actually going to do anything, because
Right.
then that means that it's something that we can't control. That means that this is a
Right.
problem that has no real solution. And the truth is that there is a solution. Community is the solution, and education about, like, how other people feel, and reclaiming the narratives that are being told about us. Like, that's how we heal. Reclaiming the things that we feel we've lost, and understanding that nothing's ever truly lost. That is how we heal, by being in community with others, not by pushing others to the side, and saying, well, it's all their faults and we're victims, and so we're fucked, and that's where we are. Like,
Right.
that's not gonna work either. And
Right.
also, when we do have those conversations with people who are white people, being able to be patient with their responses. And I will tell you, for me personally, I will be patient until I feel like I'm talking to a wall, and then I will no longer be patient with you, because I don't believe in trying to convince other people of my point. I will share my point of view. And if I know that you listen to it, you're honoring it, I'll continue sharing. But if all you want to do is find a way to confirm your own bias, you're going to have to do that somewhere else. That's just not going to. So there's that.
Yes,
I,
well, and I'm a little different because I kind of like
yeah, you
I will
like
argue
fighting
with
with people.
yeah, I have no problem. Me and a 5-year-old can go toe to toe saying yes and no for 20 hours if you'd like, because I'm not gonna
You're
get
the type
tired.
of
I've
person.
Gatorade, and I'm more than happy to refuel and
Yeah, you're
re-energize.
the type of person who would, like, go hard in a basketball game with an 8-year-old and actually celebrate beating that 8-year-old's ass. Like,
I would, hey, you got to learn. You got to learn to take your losses, man. I don't know what to tell you. This is not a participation award. You don't get a gold medal for just participating in life.
don't come
But
at me, 8-year-old.
but but I do think, right. So I agree with you, right. So that I'm two things. I'm highly unoffensible. So like it takes, I don't even know what it takes for me to like walk away from something and be offended. You could be the Klan, which I actually used to live next door to one. And that's your belief system, right? That's between you and your creator and whatever else you want to do with your life, right? So for me to, I can't carry that offense. And I also know that it takes a lot of energy to change a mind one
Yeah,
way or the other, right? It takes a lot of energy. And especially the older that mind is,
yeah.
the more difficult it is to change it, right? So the reason why I'm willing to deal with it a bit more, which is one of the reasons why I used to do the talk show that I had, was to not to try to get the Democratic Party in line and get them to figure out, because I think that's what all of the conservatives and Republicans and everybody who used to listen to the show, they thought I was just going to go bash Obama or go ham on the Democrat. Like that's not my space. They can figure out their own life. They got their own platform and their own DNC party to deal with. I'm gonna let them wrangle their own people. What I am here to do though is wrangle my people. And while y'all are all off track doing some stuff you ain't supposed to be doing, libertarians, conservatives, Republicans, like let's get our life together. And so I think you have to be patient in that process, as because it's, and the Bible talks about it too, right? That somebody's going to plant the seed, another person will come along and water the seed,
Yeah.
and then another person will help that seed to grow and take care of it, right? So
Mhm.
for me, spending the time, even though it may seem like they're trying to reaffirm their own bias, what you will never be able to say about me is that I didn't equip you with the right information,
Mhm.
and I wasn't willing to give you facts and evidence to support another way of thinking about something.
Yeah, I think that you definitely are willing to water the seed, and I'm willing to plant the seed, and somebody else can do all the other stuff. I think, I mean,
Hey, but that's what makes the world go round.
it is like, I'm not trying to be all things to all people. And I'm also, for me, it's not even about being offended. It's about saying, I'm going to see if you're willing. I'm going to make a comment to see if you're willing to engage. This comment is the litmus test to see if you're willing to listen. And if you're not willing to listen, then I'm no longer willing to talk about it. That's where I am. I just don't have the patience. I used to be really argumentative and all those things. And now I'm hashtag I'm busy. Like I don't have the patience for it. I'm just too busy. I'm doing other things. So
Right.
like I
Right.
think that I don't think it's about like you're not
It's about where you want to invest your time and your
yes,
energy.
yes, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not like it's not like you're not worth the conversation. It's that I am not the person to have that conversation with you
Right.
right now. Go get some perspective and then come back to me and let's have a different conversation or whatever. But let's all step away from this because right now I feel like sometimes things are just a waste of time. I want to throw in just a couple of things from the yogic perspective while we still have some time, because I think that, as you know, Natalie, and those of you who've been listening for a while, I'm always down for like coming at things from a historical and a yogic perspective. And there are two concepts I really want to just connect to. And one is samskaras, the concept of a samskara. And this concept of a mind groove or a memory that is formed that then colors the way that we see the world. And, in this concept that comes out of this philosophy, every lived experience, particularly lived experiences that have every lived experience creates a samskara, but lived experiences that have an emotional response create a deep samskara. So what ends up happening is that let's say that all my lived experiences are really good, positive, wonderful lived experiences. Then the way that I'm going to see the world is also really good, wonderful, positive things, But if I've had like one trauma, then anything that triggers me, that reminds me of that trauma, my life is going to somehow be colored by that one trauma. And so I mention this because I think it's really important to understand that, the Black community or communities of color in general have a lot of samskaras around racism, around, I won't attempt to Black explain, but like, if you Google Mexican, and you pull up images, you will see like, maybe you see like Mexican food, but you're also going to see lots of images of immigration, or if you Google immigrant, then you see Mexicans or what is framed to be Mexicans. Again, like Latinos as a monolith instead of like Latinos as a grouping of people from 21 different, Spanish speaking countries. Or you'll see, like, if you Google Black men, and again, all you have to do is Google the term, put an image. I used to do this with my students. Google the word, put an image, see what you find. And if you Google Black men, then you have images of like people going to jail. You have like all these things that are around like violent things. And if you Google like Asian man, then you have all these people in like suits and ties or doctors and things like that. This is what imagery is coming up and forming and creating story and narrative around what people believe. And so if you live in the city of Houston, well, I mean, my friends aren't like that, like my friends or whatever, or, just the same as if you Google Muslim, you're going to have a certain set of looks that come up when you Google Muslim. But if you live in the city of Houston, you know that Muslims are Nigerian, are Somalian, are Eritrean, are, also are, Iranian or Iraqi or, whatever. Like we have a lot of different, we've got a diversity of what Muslim, the image that Muslim comes up for us. But if you're living in Idaho, you probably don't have that same experience. And so the problem then becomes that these experiences that have created samskaras for communities of color are also creating narrative for for the communities that are not communities of color. And so when these two things marry, you have this negative event, and then you have the stereotypical narrative that come together. Then there's a lot of, there's a big clash in that, because you have the community of color saying, "Oh, we knew we couldn't trust the police," and then you have, the other community in Idaho saying, "Well, but Black people are criminals," because that's what's created. That's the image that's created. So one of the things I think we can do to step into healing. The question from Rochelle is that the same as racial bias? I think it is partial race. I think yes, I think it is partially race. I think it is obviously also not obviously, but I think it is racial bias. But it's also narrative creation, and it's the what Chima, oh my gosh, Ndichie, what she calls the narrative, or the single story narrative of like all Black people are this, or all white people are this, or all Latinos are this, or all Asians are this. And that single story that's created through imagery, through movies, through all those things, that becomes racial bias, and it also then becomes part of the community's identity, because it taps into these samskaras of watching Black and brown people getting shot or killed or arrested or whatever, because we're also seeing those same images. So I think we need to just consider that these are many traumas. And so they actually are forming the way that Black and brown people view the world. It's forming our whole construct of what relationship with police are like. And, this is why, like, my brother, who's, 6 feet tall, a heavy set guy, is going to have a very different response when a Black man, when a police officer stops him versus when I get stopped by a cop, because I haven't seen those same images of Black women per se. I mean, Sandra Bland, of course, but obviously not to the same level as Black men. So I don't have that same samskara formed, but that cop does, from the Black man aspect of it. And I'm not quite sure that I'm articulating myself well, but I hope that what people are understanding is that those images that are being created they represent, the samskara means that they represent an actual lived experience for us. Even though it's not lived directly or personally, it still represents a lived experience for us, and it creates this mind groove that then tells us where to feel safe. And that's an important thing, I think, for us to recognize, so that when we are in conversations with other people, we can start from an understanding that there's a safety question. When Black people are in certain groups, like, we actually don't feel safe in certain situations, or in certain places, or certain cities or states.
Yeah, right. Whole states.
Whole states. Where I'm like, nah,
I'll be like, nah, I'm good. I don't care what kind of food y'all got over there.
Yeah, I'm skipping Tennessee. I'm skipping Alabama. I'm just gonna skip it. Like, it's not for me. I wanted to mention one other thing, and this is, and Natalie, I know you and I have talked about this, and this is another point of yogic philosophy, which is about the creation of facts, or how we create knowledge. And according to yoga philosophy, we create knowledge through what we see, what we infer, and also what we learn from other people. And so it's important for us to understand that we're using all three of those methods to create meaning facts at any given time. We're using what we read or what we see, or what we personally experience, and then the stories of others to create facts and to create knowledge. And this means that we have to be getting those sources from different areas, otherwise we're living in an echo chamber. So this is another concept that comes from yoga philosophy that suggests that we need to look for people who are completely outside of our experience to get a better perspective, and we need to keep reading, and we need to keep um, understanding that our experience isn't the only experience in order to actually understand the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So that is just a little bit of how we can step into what we can do from here, from the perspective of yoga. Read better things, talk to more people, and understand that our experience is only 1/3 of the true story.
And talk to more people, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
Especially
Because
if it
we
makes you
have,
uncomfortable.
especially because we seem to have created a culture of comfort. Like, if something doesn't make me happy, like everybody posts these things about, if it doesn't make you happy, then whatever, get rid of it. Or if somebody has stolen your joy, then get rid of it. I'm like, y'all, like, you're gonna be got rid of everybody in your whole life in about 5 minutes. Like,
well, I mean,
I'm not saying it should be
at
a
the age of
continuous.
46, I can say that the circle is small, but I will
The,
say,
the circle is small, but the openness to experience is
yes,
different, right? I'm not saying that these should be your best friends and that you should travel with them and
but
go
be
to the
willing
beach,
to hear.
but be willing to hear, grab a cup of coffee with somebody who has a completely different vantage point of life than you do, and be okay with the fact that you may never agree with that person at all. And that's
if I wouldn't
fine.
have done that, if I wouldn't have done that, you and I would have never gotten to where we are, because I could have just said, oh, well, she thinks differently than me. But I'm
Right.
like, oh, she thinks differently than me.
Right.
It's just like, and then what we've learned is we agree on most things. The way that we approach things are different, and I think that
Right.
is so
But that's
healing.
most of the world.
That's most of the world. Like,
I think most of the world agrees on the big picture thing. How you execute against it is different for everybody, right? But I think if you ask a gajillion people, should 5-year-olds die in the street? Most people are going to say, no, I think we should do something to save the 5-year-olds. Now, how we go about saving the 5-year-olds may be very different, but we can agree that 5-year-olds shouldn't have to die in the streets.
Right. And if the person says, well, I mean, some 5-year-olds will die in the street, then that's when it's like, oh, okay, now you are definitely going to be outside of my world. Like that, like, that's fine. I want to give one more ask from people. And this one is for everybody. Stop gaslighting. Stop gaslighting. Like, stop listening to a person tell you how they feel and then make them feel like they're crazy for feeling it. Stop.
Right.
It's not okay. It's not okay. And it's not how we're all going to learn and go toward healing. And to that end, the second part of that is for every single person listening, for everyone who said anything, Rochelle, Katie, Alex, Irene, Shars, everyone who's on right now, everyone listening, may we all start creating spaces for various perspectives. We just can't, like, if we keep just saying all X are evil and all X are whatever, we will never actually like understand each other, because while we're asking for institutions that are that have had historical have been historically racist, while we're asking for them to change, for those of us who aren't willing to become a part of those institutions, like we're not willing to become the attorney or the senator or the president or the governor or whatever, then how we can transform our world is through creating spaces for discourse, which isn't going to happen when we're saying this entire swath of people is crazy. Like, it's just not going to happen. So I think for us, healing is going to have to come it's going to have to happen by looking at other people and seeing a human. If I look at a Republican and I just see a racist person, and my whole everything is framed from, oh, Republican, racist, then that means that I will not be in community with like part of my in-laws. That means that I can't be in community with half of Texas. That means I can't be in community with like a third of the country. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't be, that's a lot of people who I immediately exclude. So I think part of what we need to do too, and I know this is hard to hear for those of us who are feeling really hurt and really attacked, is that we can't actually see, white people as the problem, or Trump as the problem, or the GOP as the problem, or we just can't. We have to see lack of community, lack of conversation, and lack of humanity as the problem. And that's going to be, that's going, and a big and, we also have to call out bullshit when we see it.
That's what I was going to say. It's not enough. It's not enough. And this was my ask of all the white people that I know. I was just like, it's not enough for you to be neighborly. It's not enough for us to have a barbecue together, or to once a month have a community event, and you come over, we share a bottle of wine. I don't drink, whatever the case may be. Right? That's not enough. Like I need you to stand in for someone who is being unseen and violated at that moment in time when you have influence in that space. That is what matters to me. Like, I need you to be someone's advocate, be the person who says, I think you've mistreated. So, matter of fact, it just happened to me the other day in the phone store. Like and it had nothing to do with race. It had everything. I had to stop and give somebody, a manager, a coaching moment. Like, there was some confusion around the phone that they had given my husband. We went back to the store. The manager comes out and he tells the sales associate, he's like, "Did you pull this phone?" And his tone was so angry, and I'm like, oh my God, I know your store might get dinged for $1,500 because you got to restock it and you can't sell it again, but can you not make everybody in here feel uncomfortable because you don't know how to manage your team? And he goes on and on about who grabbed the phone and was it so and so, and so at the end of the transaction, when I'm walking out, I see the manager and I'm like, I really hope that you will stand up and be a leader and not hold someone accountable, whether it's financially or with their job or with being made to feel uncomfortable for a simple mistake that was made. I'm good with you using it as a teachable moment about being focused on what we need to do to deliver to our customer experience. But I'm not good with you coming into a space and making everybody feel like somebody's about to get fired over a $1,500 Samsung 20. That is completely inappropriate as a leader, and you're a manager, so you're a leader. And he was like, no. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be back in a couple of weeks to make sure all these people still employed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just speaking up for the other, and sometimes I actually think that, and I think it's actually kind of hard right now too, because the minute white people try to speak up for Black people, it's considered white splaining, or that's another thing, and so I think that's not necessarily helpful. But what I do think a person can do is start, when we're talking about creating those safe spaces for people to speak their truth and things like that, and for healing to actually happen, then sometimes it's about spreading other people's voices, other people's narrative, other people, people of color, holding space for utilizing your privilege to hold space for other people who can't speak in that moment, or who can't enter that space in that moment, or who can't speak. us speaking for George Floyd is speaking for someone who can't speak. That is the privilege of being alive, right?
Right.
Me having this platform is the privilege of having a platform and being able to speak to a varied audience that hopefully does something to create change. But I think what I was one thing I want to ensure that I'm clear about is that we can't create those same spaces and actually have those honest discourses and actually step into healing if we're just calling everyone a problem. Like we have
Right.
to actually be able to come into a space where we can actually have a conversation, and we can't do it if we're starting from anger. We have to actually do it from a place of introspection.
Right.
And if we do that, then we can have those conversations and that discourse. So so yeah, I hope that we will do that. I know that we're coming to the end of our conversation. Um, I guess I just am hoping that we, if you are not a Black person and you're listening to this, um, you know, sharing, a quote. If you don't know what to say, perhaps spread the quote from, a quote from James Baldwin, or share a quote from Maya, or like share somebody else's words right now. That for me is really, really beautiful when I see people who are not Black sharing Black people's words to speak to the community instead of just like speaking again, because I think that a lot of space has been occupied by white voices. And so the more that white people actually use their spaces to occupy with Black voices is actually a really beautiful way of empowering the Black community. And that's just my opinion. It doesn't have to be anyone else's, but for sure, I think that it's very beautiful when people do that. And to just ask your friends, are they okay? I got that message from two different people today, and I thought that was beautiful because nobody had asked me that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was beautiful. Like, are you okay? And do you want to talk about this?
And sometimes you don't even need, if you don't know what to say, as Thumper's mom would say, then don't say anything at all, right? Like, like sometimes that's a good thing. I don't know why I keep referring back to Thumper's mom. Clearly,
I
she had
love
a very big
Thumper's
influence
mom.
on me. But like, then don't say anything at all. And maybe your post is just that you don't have any words, but this is a space for you for people to come to express themselves and the hurt or the pain or the confusion or whatever that they are feeling at this moment. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like when
And
somebody dies, you
yeah,
don't always have words for the
you don't
person
have any words
who
for that
lost
person.
their,
Yeah,
you have there are no words for that
no
person in
words
that
for that.
situation. And so sometimes it's just whatever it is that they need, you just need to hold the space for them to get out whatever it is they need to get out.
Yeah, and I think is that those words of "I love you," "I'm sorry that this is happening," "How may I
Yeah.
hold space for you?" or "How may I help?"
Right.
Is there something that you would have me do, or whatever? Like those words are just so powerful, and they're the way that we step into healing. Because as Irene mentioned earlier, like we're pissed, we're hurt, we feel under attack. At least I know she and I do. Um, and we're tired. We're tired. Like there's PTSD, involved in our communities that are constantly being um, under attack for just being Black, or just being brown, or
Hmm.
just being Muslim, or just being gay, or just being whatever. Like whatever is the case may be, whatever is the reason for society's othering or xenophobia, of that particular community. Um, I think that the path forward is community that's honest and authentic, and a space where people can actually move forward together. And there's that concept of Ubuntu, of I am because we are, like understanding that, somehow South Africa was able to come up with this, and all of their horrible history with as Trevor Noah would call beautiful, perfect racism. They were able to
Mm,
this word came up as one that came out of the anti-apartheid movements of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Like, we all move forward together, or we all die together. And maybe it's spiritual death, maybe it's emotional death, maybe it's physical death, but we all move forward together, hopefully. And may we all create these spaces that are in which we're seeing other people, and we're loving and other people, and feeling love from other people, and we're affirming other people and feeling affirmed by other people. I truly believe that that is the path to healing. And then at the same time, we send people into the institutions, and we start making change from within. I think that without both those things, we're screwed. And I think that we end up just coming back over and over again to the same thing that we've been in for a really long time. So the question, I think, to end on is, do we truly want change? If we want change, it's going to take it from everybody. It's going to take us working on those, resolving those samskaras, not seeing everything from the lens of the past, but also being able to see things for hope for the future, and being able to be in true community with one another. So that's those are my final thoughts. Natalie, do you have any?
um, I guess my whole thing would be, to me, one of the most important things. I know, from the yoga perspective, community is a big thing, and I will say that uh, if you cannot get to community, and you cannot get to where everybody is holding hands and singing kumbaya and loving everybody and affirming everybody, that's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Just be respectful, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you have to, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to affirm me. I'm not asking you to do anything for me. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
asking you to respect me, that I am a
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Right. So
Yeah.
there's no need to unnecessarily kill me. There's no need
Yeah.
to think that I won't bleed when you cut me. There's no need to think that when I give birth in a hospital that I should not get the same kind of attention, right? So I am just asking for the same, to be the same, to
Yeah.
have this, to be the same, have the same acceptance. You don't have to love me, or, want to cheer for me or anything, right?
Yeah.
Respect me, and give me the equal part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if we're going to be separate, let's be equal. That's all I need in my life, for me, right? So that's for me, right? So if we can't get to the kumbaya, cool, but in
We'll,
that,
we'll get the
respect
love.
me as a human being.
We will get the love and the affirmations from our communities and from
Correct.
our circle and all that. But yeah, let's get to the point where we just see each other as human. And I think that
Right.
the work is amongst the oppressed and the oppressor. I think that
Yes.
the work of being able to see people as human and individualistic, and not asking people to rally around fear or hatred, to
Right.
create community around fear or hatred. I think that that is the harder work for the
Yeah.
oppressed communities. To not ask people to rally around hatred is our work.
Yeah.
And for the oppressive communities to not rally around fear is their work. But I
Right.
think that each of us, we all have our work to see each other as human. and
Yes.
I will go down into the grave saying that for me, that humanity is cultivated through community, because you can't hate people up close. And I will go ahead and quote Brene Brown on that one, even though y'all know I don't have all the love for Brene
Ciao.
that everyone else has for her. But I will quote that: you can't hate people up close. You can't, because you're like, damn, like, you're challenging some assumptions that I had, and I can't hate you because I know you now. So yeah, we'll leave all the cheerleading and all that for people who truly care about us. But
Right.
may we all see each other as human. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like, shit,
Yes,
bar.
please. Like
God,
that's the
how
lowest
hard is
standard that
it?
I have.
Yes. So that's the bar. Can we all
That's
just
the
be human?
bar.
Can we all just be
Yeah.
human?
Yeah.
I think that is it for us today. I know this is a long one, and I appreciate all of you who have joined in, either in our live feed and of course, Natalie. Natalie is spitting knowledge every day through her blog and through her social media, which is always Natalie, or on Instagram is at Narceneaux with an
Yep.
X.
Hmm.
And Also, Natalie and I have our endeavor of coffee conversations and cleaning, where we can talk about difficult things, but over coffee, and there's always laughter. And we usually have some disagreements, and we come together. And then also, there is so much more that's happening in terms of creating community and coming together. That's happening at Ashe Yoga. .com and through the Ranch Houston, which is located in Houston, Texas. But Love and YouTube are sending things worldwide. So thank you so much for you guys tuning in with us into this show. And I hope you'll come back in 2 weeks, where we'll talk about something else that hopefully will, I don't know, make your day a little brighter. It's always my goal to leave you better than I found you, and I hope that happened for you guys today. Namaste.
Namaste.